Hey y'all, Greg Armstrong here, pastor of Renew Church, the host of the Gospel and Race podcast. I am calling for all pastors, church planters, and leaders who feel an intentional call towards multi-ethnic ministry. You know, I looked for a long time to try to find a tribe that could help me sort out the complexities of multi-ethnic church planting. Well, look, family, we've created this space for you to enter into a community of like-minded leaders who will sort and discern together how we lead faithfully in the multi-ethnic space. We call it the Multi-Ethnic Leaders Network. Real easy. I want you to go to multiethnicnetwork.com. I want you to get all the information you can regarding how we're going to move forward together and journey in all that God's called us to do as multi-ethnic leaders in His kingdom. I'll see y'all there. Yo, everybody, we are back. Listen, I took a little bit of break halfway through first season because life is lifing, and I'm trying to finish this degree, and I've been writing, and all kind of stuff been going on. But we are back, and I'm excited about the second half of season 1 of the Gospel and Race podcast. Welcome, y'all. Greg Armstrong here, your host. And we've been diving into conversations around the church and race. These are the spaces that we hold for us to really lean in to the conversation about church and race. And as you all know by now, if you've been listening to the podcast, I am a 100% advocate for God's vision for the multi-ethnic church. Mm-hmm. And so that's where this leans into. And so welcome back, everybody. Thanks for jumping in. It's a good day because I've got my sister in the house.
Yes.
I don't even know what to listen to me, y'all. If you've seen me, you've more than likely seen her.
Yep.
We've been rocking together since 2015, 2016. My songwriting partner, my worship leading partner, my homie, Jacquelyn Owens, everybody.
What's up? Hey, guys.
In the building. Come on, man. We were not doing this podcast if Jacquelyn Owens wasn't going to be on this podcast.
Oh, that's funny.
You understand what I'm saying? And so I got to frame this a little bit because everybody knows, like, from the songs we've written, the one that's gotten the most attention is Psalm 91. So when I say, oh, that's Jackie, when they meet you, they're like, that's the girl that's singing Psalm 91 with the hat. By the way, the hat is the anointing.
You know.
And so Jackie, we've known each other since 2016, earlier than that, actually.
Yeah, I was at like 2015.
2015.
Yeah.
And we really felt a call to begin writing songs for the church. And so we sat and we hung out for a while, talked about what it would look like to write songs for the church, specifically for churches like multi-ethnic churches, songs that would potentially cross over into multiple spaces. And we just jumped out there and did it. And we've been rocking ever since with Renew Collective. So if y'all know us from Renew Collective, we're the ones that's always hollering and singing. Yeah. Well, I'm hollering, you sing.
Right, that's about how it goes.
I'm hollering, you sing. Fun fact about me and Jackie, people don't really know this. Like, I am the extroverted person in this duo. Jackie is the introverted person in this duo.
Yeah, and very extreme, 2 extremes. So we balance one another out, right?
Like mad extremes.
So Greg, he'll say, sis, let's cut a record next week. And I'm like, how about 3 years from now? Let's let's plan this out, you know. And then we meet somewhere in the middle, maybe a few months down the line, you know.
That's exactly how it goes.
Yeah.
I'm more spontaneous. My ADD kicks in real strong randomly. And I'm like, Jackie, let's write 12 songs for a record and we can record it next month. And she's like, why don't we take 3 months and write one song and make it a good one? So we balance each other out so good. Yeah. And it's been a joy leading worship with you. You're my homie all day, and we're going to keep doing it. She's the one you've kept me leading worship. Like, I tried to kind of set the mantle down and focus on pastoring, but I've been encouraged by you to keep singing, keep leading, and all that kind of good stuff.
I mean, that's awesome. You have a gift for it, and you know, I know God wants you to continue using that. So
appreciate you, girl.
But I'm excited to be here. Like you said, we have been partners in crime for a while. And man, I mean, I definitely look to you as just my partner in ministry and a mentor even. So I'm excited for this and what God is doing even through this podcast. Like, this is exciting. So thank you. Thanks for inviting me.
Come on. You already know. It's fam. So today we're going to talk about worship, and we're talking about music. We've been talking about church planting, multi-ethnic church planting on this podcast. We've been talking about sort of like some sociological constructs as it relates to church and race. Today we're going to talk about music, which is actually one of the major keys as you talk about race, ethnicity, and the church. Mainly because a lot of churches want to diversify probably through the music in many respects first. I know over the years, like being in church ministry or consulting with other churches and worship teams, the one indicator that churches feel that will make the church diverse is music. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. But what I want to dig into, this sparked a little bit of buzz a little while ago with an article that came out. I read it in Religious News. And the article was called "There's a Reason Every Hit Worship Song Sounds the Same." Like that subject cracked me up. Like whoever wrote the article is like, that's how they feel.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? There's a reason why every hit worship song sounds the same. Now, here's kind of the subtitle on it. The study looked at 38 songs that made the top 25 list of CCLI and praise charts, which track what songs are played in churches, and found that almost all had originated from one of 4 mega churches. And one of the quotes was this: "If you've ever felt like most worship music sounds the same," the study's author wrote, "it may be because the worship music you are most likely to hear in many churches is written by just a handful of songwriters from a handful of churches." And that's kind of where we find ourselves in. So a little bit of background, because I think we got some credibility to talk about this subject. One, Jackie and I are songwriters. We've been in worship ministry. I know I've been in worship ministry over 20 years leading worship. You about the same. Tell me about how long you've been leading worship.
I would say about 15 years or so for sure. Yeah.
15 years leading worship in multiple settings. So in black church worship settings, in white church worship settings, and in multi-ethnic church spaces. Yep. We've both led worship in these spaces. And so I wanted to, we're not the experts at it, but I wanted to kind of ground some credibility in this subject that we've seen quite a bit in the worship space.
Yeah, we've seen and experienced some things because of that breadth of, experiences we've had in different settings. So
exactly,
we've seen some things.
And then it also expands when you start talking about songwriting. So not just leading worship, but as songwriters, who are we writing these songs for? What churches are going to sing these songs? Thinking through and assessing where would this fit the best. And so we're going to have this conversation. What were your initial thoughts of the article before I jump in? Give me just some bullet points that you were thinking about when you read the article about all these songs being, these are the top 4 or 5 mega churches, and it's being recycled through the same handful of churches and songwriters.
Yeah. So my first thought was facts. Like, this is facts. Like, I can't tell you how many times I've led worship at a church, and I go back the next week and be like, I know we did this song last week. Like, is it really a different song? Because they are tending to sound the same. And so, I think as songwriters, this is something we've kind of known, because as songwriters, we're like, oh, who wrote this? We're looking at the writers, and we're constantly seeing some of the same names, like, oh, this guy is, but the average listener or, worship person in the congregation maybe not be paying attention to that fact of who wrote it. But yeah, when you start to look into it, you definitely see a trend. And so I thought the article was spot on. Like, the songs are coming from some of the same few places, and you can kind of tell. You can kind of tell through how the songs are sounding.
It all sounds the same. Like, and I'm not knocking, like, a lot. Can I make this disclaimer about it? By the way, I got my most worship leader look going on right here. And this was not intentional. I got the flat bill with the clear glasses and all that kind of stuff. But I love a lot of these songs that's out right now. Like, we got to make that disclaimer, because when we start talking about this and really kind of pulling the layers back on it, I don't want people to assume that the songs that this article is referencing, or even the songwriters, that they're bad. They're not bad. It's a lot of songs we do at our church by some of these same artists. The artists, by the way, are Hillsong, I think Elevation Church, Bethel, and I think a little bit of Passion was in there as well. So those are like the four.
Yeah, I think 22 of the songs came from just those four churches. 22 of the biggest songs that were singing in churches came from 4 mega churches.
4 mega churches. And so, by the way, we love a lot of, well, not all of them, but I love a lot of these songs that we do in our church. And it's funny, depending on who's doing the songs, the congregation don't even always know like where the song came from. But us as songwriters and worship leaders, we do. And so I wanna preface it with that. I'm gonna spark a few things that we need to talk about regarding this. One, these songs are coming from mega churches. The mega church construct is frowned upon by many, accepted by many. I'm not here to demean the mega church, but here's a few things that I wrote down that we need to understand. The mega church's influence and ability to shape culture is massively undervalued. Mega churches are shaping Christian culture in a way that is actually, in some ways, there's some good, but in a lot of ways, especially for smaller churches, it is it's hurting smaller churches because smaller churches feel as if they need to be said mega church.
They're becoming idols. These mega churches are becoming idols, and something smaller churches are looking to. Like this is where we're trying to get to, and that's reflected even beyond music, how we're setting stages and all types of aspects. You know what I'm saying? Like people are just like idolizing these mega churches, the smaller churches.
Exactly. And so I think we undervalue the influence of the mega church. And so if we're going to start talking about the songwriters and the songwriters that come from mega churches, I think we need to talk about the impact and the influence of a mega church on Christendom, on the modern Christian movement. Mega churches are still kind of leading the charge in how we do church. Girl, listen, I ain't naming no names. But like, even, not just music, but aesthetics. I saw like a storefront church. A storefront church.
Right.
With an LED wall.
It's like we can see the words.
Do you understand what I'm saying? Like you could have put a 30-inch TV on the stage and we would have seen the lyrics.
That's funny.
But please don't kill me. But you got an LED wall. And no knock, but the way I look at that is you probably should fix the roof first or get some new carpet before you put a $10,000 LED wall
right.
in
How's
your
your
church.
sound system going? You know?
Get the sound system right. LED wall, but that's just to me, that's one of the effects of a mega church setting the standard for what Christian practice, especially when it comes to aesthetics, should look like. Yeah. They laugh at us a lot. You know, our production, Cheryl, our production director here at our church, you know, I'm like, yo, bring them lights down some, you know, and we get that from the theatrical, very consumerist, very attractional mega church model. And that's no secret. So everybody knows I'm not throwing shade on that. Like, that's not a secret. Like, we all get the lighting, and everybody's got LED lights. Everybody's got Fresnels. Everybody's got Lipsoidal. Everybody's got staging. Everybody's blacking out their stage. We get this from the mega church. Theatrical, attractional example that then smaller churches begin to adopt. And so my first point to this whole article is, because it was really centered around mega churches, is that mega churches have massive influence on how we do church.
Yeah.
I don't care what anybody says, even if you're unless you are just fully anti-attractional. Most churches that I've encountered, black, white, and other, small, big, or medium, have adopted megachurch principles to scale and grow. Yeah. And we've done the same thing. So I don't want to act like we're exempt. Like we've done the same. We got some vibe in our church.
And it's scary because it creates this like group think type of thing of, you know, what's right or what allows the Holy Spirit to come in when the lights are a certain way or the music sounds a certain way. And in the midst, you're losing originality. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
So what happens is we go to some mega churches conference. We're in awe of the lights and, you know, the LED screens and everything. And then we come back and bring it to our church and try to replicate. But we need to have originality in there somewhere too. Like, what is God doing in this church? How can we use the creativity in our church to come up with ideas of how to be creative in our service?
Exactly. So I'm telling you that's the first thing. That's I'm posing that. Would love to hear you all's thoughts in the comments on that. Secondly, here's my second thought on this article, is that many mega churches and music departments within them, they understand ministry, but they also understand industry.
Yeah.
That there's an industry to the music that you and I subscribe to or write that mega churches can tap into. And now you're talking about resources, you're talking about marketing dollars, you're talking about influence, you're talking about who's who, you're talking about being connected to the major recording labels. How much money can these songs bring to our ministry through industry? And I'm not saying that's bad.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is, though, the muscle a megachurch has to promote and market music and set the standard for an industry is massively undervalued, and we don't realize how much that the implications are with that. But then also, it's a major line item as it relates to the relevancy of that church. Now, if you notice the trend, and it's not so much a trend, but even pre-pandemic, even the boom of the megachurch days, black, white, and other. I mean, T.D. Jakes got albums and records. I remember when New Birth and Eddie Long, they had albums and records. Music as an industry is always one of the first objectives for a relevant and growing ministry.
Yep.
Music. What is it? Why? Because it enhances and reveals the relevancy of said ministry, one, but then it also opens up revenue line items for the ministry in terms of record sales.
Exactly.
And we don't talk about it we always forget that. So when the question is being asked in this article, why do these 4 or 5 mega churches corner the industry in terms of music? It's because it make money.
Right.
And it works.
Exactly.
It
They make
works.
money. They got money to market it like crazy. Therefore, it's a #1 hit on the charts. You hearing it on the radio over and over. You get to church. Oh, that's my jam. Worship leader, can we sing this song? Because that's my jam. It's like this chain of events, and it's an industry game, if you will. Like it's about industry. It's about funds. Like that's what's happening.
And people don't realize how much business goes into running a functional organization, especially a music organization. And it's no different in the worship industry than in the secular world, which is we're going to go with a sound and we're going to hire the same producers. I think about when like Dark Child was hot and he produced everybody's record. And, you heard him on Michael Jackson, you heard him on Beyonce, you heard him on, I'm not saying he's not relevant now, but there are new producers now that are driving the sound that consumers are buying.
Yeah.
And so I'm not mad at like the mega churches cornering the market, but the reality is from a business perspective, if they found a formula to write songs that sound the same because consumers are going to keep buying and streaming these same songs and churches are going to keep singing them and big churches are singing them. So now they're reporting, the CCLI reporting, the revenue, the monetization. Now, if my video is going to get 1 million views, this money.
Yeah.
It's big money.
For sure.
And so that's just a reality. So I don't hate on it. But
Right. And we can't hate on it because they are writing amazing songs. Like The Blessing. Are you kidding me? Like to me, that song is like a masterpiece. It is. Like, so they're writing good songs. But even that kind of goes back to budget. They hiring the best songwriters out there. You know what I'm saying? Like a lot of it does come back down to money, industry, revenue, what's going to bring in revenue for the church. Because the article also mentioned that like pre-2010, it was individual worship leaders who were putting out these hit songs like Chris Tomlin and, but after that, they started partnering with these mega churches. Like now they're
Right.
affiliated with one of these 4 to 6 mega churches. Boom. You hire one of the best songwriters, the big guys out there, revenue.
That's it. So let's just make that's just what it is, right?
Yeah.
And so some of the assumptions though, so I'll get into those are some of the realities.
Mm-hmm.
I want to get into some of the assumptions that perhaps I may have a problem with megachurch or the cornering of songwriting and all this kind of stuff. One is this, is that we as a culture, as a church culture, have almost placed the mega church and these influential churches as the experts in every area of Christian engagement because they're large. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it's like, because, I've gone to conferences of massive churches, and when you go to a conference, man, at a huge church, you go to like that elevation behind the scenes thing they used to do, or you go to like Gateway or some of these other massive, you walk into the space and you're like instantly inspired. Like God wants me to do this. Like God wants me to do this. And you go through a tour and they show you all the gear that they use. They show you like, the $2,000 in-ear monitor packs. They show you, the $1,000 capsule on the mic, and you're like, y'all amazing. That's why you sound so dope. I need to go back home and do this. Right? And but because these ministries are successful, no matter how the success came, perhaps the success came through a leading voice, a personality. Perhaps the success came like Hillsong, not just through the influence of their church, but their music really like made them fully relevant. And then they spun off to other things. But when we see the mega church as the expert, I think for me, it begins to hurt the local witness of those who are on the ground doing the work in forgotten spaces. And let's relate this to songwriters, for instance. So most people look at a Phil Wickham or a Hillsong or Bethel, whatever the case, and say, because they are so popular, because they're so good, and I'm not saying they're not, because they are, but because they are so massively relevant, and because so many people actually listen and sing their music, they are the experts in songwriting. They are the ones. And I think that hurts the witness of the local worship leader, the local songwriter, because then there's an insignificance that comes because you know that your song, whether you think it's good or not, it's never going to hit the masses. But there's this play in there. You know what I'm saying? What's your thoughts on that?
For sure. God He's doing, who knows better, like, what your church needs to hear in this season than somebody in the congregation. You know what I'm saying? Like, and that's why I believe, like, everybody should be writing. You know what I'm saying? Every church should be writing because you're sitting there. You know what God is doing. You know what people need to hear and what they're going to be blessed by. You know what I'm saying? And so you're going and snatching this song from some big conference or something. Maybe God has like something really specific he wants to say to your church and through your church to the rest of the world. You know what I'm saying? I think
we love those songs. Like we
do.
love.
We gonna always have a What a Beautiful Name It Is and a Reckless. You know what I'm saying? Those are my jams. That's not knocking that or saying we need to totally eradicate these megachurch songs. However, we need to not stamp on creativity within the church.
I agree.
Within our local churches.
And with that, because we look at mega churches as the expert, and we say because the preaching is good, they're experts at preaching, because groups are blowing up, they're experts at groups. There's a lot of different indicators that make a church thrive. And one, geography, environment, part of the country, gifting, whatever the case may be. But I think the wrong assumption is to look at a mega church and say, you are the expert at said things because you have the resource to provide said things. Like, because you see what I'm saying? Here's what I say to that in terms of songwriting, because you mentioned songwriting and how we need to write for our local expression. I believe, I'm going to say this so y'all don't kill me on this, but I believe this. I believe that the megachurch worship industry, songwriting, whatever, has inspired us in many ways. I've been so inspired by these songs that have come out of the mega churches, both black, white, and other. However, it's also made us extremely lazy. Because I believe that as local worship pastors, songwriters, and churches, it is easier for me to say what's the top 20 hits that I can that my worship team's already listening to. Mm-hmm. And because they're listening to it, I'm gonna teach it. They love it. The church loves it because it's top 20 on whatever.
Right.
I don't know Christian radio now, but whatever's out there now. K-Loves, that's the thing. Yeah. So because everybody is circulating, everybody knows it, it's gonna work. And it does work. Mm-hmm. But to me, it's lazy, not irresponsible, but lazy when you lean on these massively produced and available songs rather than leaning into the vulnerability of a local congregation and saying what would express kingdom in my local congregation that it's going to take a little bit of work for me to really lean into. Yeah. What does that call for? That means that I have to be incarnational in my relationship. I got to be amongst people. I got to know who's in my congregation. Right. I got to know what the burden of my leadership, like what do we stand for, who we are, and then I write to those things. And I just think people get lazy when they say, oh, that song's dope, let's grab that and sing it. Because if you fire that song up, most times, everybody's going to jump in and sing it.
Oh, yeah.
However, if you've written a song for your congregation and it's going to take a little time to digest.
Oh, yeah. They just going to look at me the first time.
They just going to look at you a little bit. Okay, I got to digest. This wasn't okay, love. Like, where'd this come from?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And it takes a little time to digest the sincerity of those words for a local congregation. Then I think a lot of people take the easier route.
Yeah.
Which is just grab a song. And I won't do this again, but I'm going to give a disclaimer here. We love these songs. However, I feel like sometimes it does not empower local songwriters to be faithful to local geography and local place and local incarnational church and ecclesiology. And it allows for us to just take what's easy and preach it.
Yeah. It's a popularity contest. Like that's really what it's come down to. Like you said, it's easy to just see what are the top songs, and I'm guilty of that. Like as a worship leader, I just like, okay, we kind of use this phrase like, what's gonna work,
right? What's gonna work?
That's scary. that's scary to see what's gonna work, and this is a whole nother topic for another podcast. But that leads into the kind of consumerism mindset that has crept into the church too. Like,
it's all consumerism.
What's going to be popular? What's gonna keep people coming back? What's gonna make people feel the Holy Spirit? You know what I'm saying? Like it's messed
consumerism.
Look, that's a whole nother podcast.
I know it's another podcast, but I'm telling you, consumerism, individualism is one thing that kills local church ministry because we only want to feed what we know people want rather than feed what people need. So I believe this, Jackie, me and you have talked about this so many times. I believe the challenges that come through preaching of the gospel in a local congregation should also be the same challenges that challenge our people through the singing of song, through the working out of lyric, and through local worship in terms of music and arts expression.
No, that's it. Like, look, a pastor can't go snatch Bethel's message from last Sunday and plug it into their church. Why are we doing that with our music?
Well, they do. But, you know what I'm
saying? They shouldn't. They shouldn't. Look, it'll be a little fishy, but that same originality, or ideally the leader, whether it be the pastor or the worship leader, is hearing from God of what God wants to say to your congregation. So we have to be doing the same thing with our music. You know what I'm saying? Why can our music be copycat from the top 4 churches? We have to do better.
All right, here's the final assumption that I want for this article that I want to pose. I believe in these, and I'm gonna get into the race part of this in a minute. So y'all hold on with me, but I want to hit these assumptions. This last assumption is that because of the influence of mega churches and their availability and their relevancy to a worldwide culture, we assume that the songs that are in the top 25, these 38 songs, we assume that those are God's choices for the body. It's an assumption. I'm not saying everybody. It's an assumption that those songs are what God is choosing for this hour. And I've heard people say that.
Yeah.
Like, this is a song for this hour. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that God God has voices for this hour that are for the world. God has ministries for this hour that are for the world. God has music for this hour that are for the world. But when I look at the when I look at 38 songs in the top 25 list that all sound the same and that all from the same majority white megachurch construct, I have a hard time believing that this is God's songs for this hour primarily. Primarily, which feeds into our explanation of industry, that industry and commerce and economy oftentimes drives what we think is God's plan for the day. Right. When in actuality, it's just money.
Yeah, it's not a coincidence that your favorite songs that help you feel the Holy Spirit are all from the churches that have a lot of money to market the songs and to keep, have you hear it on the radio. Again, we're not demonizing these songs at all.
No, not at all.
These are jams, like absolute jams. But again, the conversation is worth having to expand your thinking that these are not coincidences. You know what I'm saying? Like, what's going into this? What should we be doing better? What should we be doing differently?
Right. Like, so somebody who's like killing it in songwriting at a church of 50 people, who's writing powerful songs for his local congregation, that's very biblical, theologically centric, Jesus centric, like, because he doesn't have $500,000 to really market the song, does that make it any less relevant? Exactly. Any less powerful? And that's the point. The point is, we've made assumptions that, this is God's song for this hour. And I think when people say that, I think to myself, maybe it's one of them. But to be honest with you, it's the song that has been most placed in front of us for this hour. You know what I mean? Like, it's been the song that's been most heavily marketed to us in this hour. It's been the song that has been most, and again, there are songs for this hour that God, I believe, breathes upon.
Yeah, that great song.
But then also, I believe that leaning into the wrong assumption that these 38 songs in the top 25 list are like God's choice for the body of Christ right now is problematic for me. And that leads me into sort of a segue into the reason why I believe it's problematic, because now I got so much. I had to write my stuff down. I think the deeper issue is this. The deeper issue is that many of these songs, these 38 songs in the top 25, are not just for the audiences that they were written for locally, but they've seeped into the greater Christian community in all racial demographic of church. And it's hitting everywhere. So every church is singing. At one time, every church, when I say every church, unless you only sing out the hymnal, every church was singing Holy Spirit, right? By Bethel. What the church is singing now? Everybody's singing something. I mean every church sang Our God with Chris Tomlin back in the day. I don't care if you sang, I don't care if you were a monk. Chris Tomlin got paid from the monastery because you sang Our God. Then he did the world edition and all that kind of stuff. Translated in a million different languages, right? Oh, yeah. Like, some of these songs have crossed over, and some of the songs on this list, I'm not going to read them, have crossed over into spaces where the song really wasn't written for that demographic. Yeah. You feel what I'm saying? So here's what we hear a lot of times with churches. They'll say, man, we were in a season of faith at our church. We were at a season of tilling the ground at our church. We were at a season of this, and we wrote this song for our church. So they're writing songs for their church.
Yeah, they do what they're supposed to do.
They do what they're supposed to do, right? Like, you do what you're supposed to do. But now I'm going to market this because this could actually have larger implications outside of our congregation. But the problem is, so now a black church would then adopt this song that doesn't fit the cultural narrative. It doesn't speak to the disparities of their community. And now we're supposed to appropriate that. And I think that's where we're missing it in terms of these churches that are cornering the market, where white mega church in an affluent community, those words, that ecclesiology, that theology, those lyrics are not faithful to transfer into a community that's been demonized or marginalized or without much economy. but it still feeds those, like it still gets into those places.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's my issue and my problem as it relates to race.
Yeah.
Because, and here's where I want to dig into, because even industry wise, and every industry person or artist who signed to a label can put their finger on this to some degree. Even black music, and I'm a black man, I can talk for the music that I know, gospel music, which is what I claim to do. Even the crossover into the black market has to come as a result of these churches, right? This white normative kind of affluent experience, right? And I know these churches have ministry in urban communities or whatever, but my point is, theologically, where they come from, what they talk about, has seeped into. So hear me. This is like me and Jackie's life. I talk all the time, and she jumps in, and then I keep talking. So I'm about to get to you, Jackie.
No, you good.
So I came from the traditional black church, gospel music. I loved choirs growing up. That's all I loved choirs. So Hezekiah Walker was it. To this day, I listen to John P. Key weekly. I'm like traditional, like, well, they weren't traditional at the time. They were like cutting edge. You know what I mean? And Gerald, my buddy, our friend, introduced me to like Commission and got me into the whinings and stuff like that in college. But before that, I'm listening to like Timothy Wright, Hezekiah Walker, John P. Key. I'm listening to Pages of Life. You got to have a choir with 3 parts and multiple people.
Right.
And to this day, that's my jam. That's my vibe right now. And I remember coming up in sort of the multi-ethnic / majority white worship space. Now, I remember, this started happening before my time, but I remember in the late 90s, early to late 90s, as a kid, I remember black churches beginning to adopt these songs that didn't necessarily fit theologically or even ethnically. But here was what was said. The songs that we're getting from contemporary Christian music, watch this. This is what was said. They're more heartfelt. They're more sincere. They have better language. They're actually worship because these songs are like love to the Father. And they got like pads and strings and it's soft and I'm crying and all that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? Back then it was, I could sing of you. I mean, when that dude wrote, what was that dude from? What church was he from? I forgot his name. Over the mountains and the sea, your river runs with love for me. Whatever. Yeah. Y'all know it in the comments. But that kind of stuff, over the mountains and the sea, your river runs with love for me. And I will open up my heart and let the healer set me free. Black folk weren't saying that. Like, we weren't saying none of that. They don't even sound right. It don't sound right to me now. You know what I mean? Beautiful song.
Yeah.
Or what was the song? What was the song where the dude said, our church has become too vain. And so we're going to stop singing or whatever. And it was, what was that song when they stopped singing and he wrote a song? I'll bring you more than a song. I'll bring you more than a song because a song in itself is not what you. It's like, oh my God, this guy is like, it's more than music. It's more than song. This is heartfelt. This is real worship. This stuff was happening in a lot of black spaces in where I was coming up at. That music's more sincere. It's more heartfelt. It's more worshipful. It's more soft. And over here in the black church experience, we're talking about, I made it out. Right. It's like, hymns, precious Lord, take my hand. I'm suffering, yada, yada, yada. And we understand the cultural implications to that and why our songs from our historic black gospel writers were about those topics because that's all we had to really get ourselves out.
Exactly.
Songs of hope, songs of freedom, songs of liberation. We ain't had no time to talk about I Could Sing of Your Love Forever. Exactly. I'm trying not to die.
Right.
You understand what I'm saying? Because I'm trying not to die. I'm trying not to get fired from this job because I'm with a racist boss. I'm trying to keep my kids eating. it's different framework. And so I want to say this: the history of Black gospel music is some of the richest theological, historical music that you will ever find, just because it's birthed out of a hope for liberation. When, in my opinion, that's directly tied to Jesus's mission of bringing hope, liberation to a people who were oppressed. And so our songs came intuitively out of those spaces of oppression, of hurt, of pain. And so that we needed music to change and cultivate and bring hope and heal the disparities of injustice and Sundays. And it was our church. We dressed up for church on Sundays while we were serving white people during the week. You know what I mean? This was our time. This was our space. And so we sang those songs. So the audacity in that cross section to say that worship by white songwriters and artists and contemporary Christian music industry is more heartfelt and more sincere than the Black worship experience, it just kills me. And I think it's absolutely dead wrong. And I'm glad that that's no longer a dominant narrative, but I think it hides behind some of what we still do now.
No, I mean, for sure. No.
I'm over here getting passionate.
Like you said, I'm used to this, Greg. That's what we do.
This is what we do, right?
No, but I mean, God is just so personal. You know, like you said, well, one person, you know, experiences him most as a healer. Somebody else experiences him most as the guy who sets free. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. I think it's important to just to acknowledge different viewpoints. You know what I'm saying? Like, why are you going and singing somebody else's testimony? I think of it as like, even when we were kids, when I was little, like Destiny's Child came out and we singing, gonna pay my telephone bills. Girl, you 5, you 10. You don't got no telephone bills, you know? It kind of equates to that to me. Like, you singing a song that is not necessarily from your viewpoint. Like, the words that somebody else is singing might be true, but that's why the songwriting is important. Like, what has God been for you? How has he revealed himself to you? And then to create songs out of that, I mean, that's powerful. That's how you get diversity, you know, in music and in songs that the local church are singing.
And stretch yourself. You know, one one observation that I get, like our church being a multi-ethnic church, and we'll do all kind of different music. And one observation I'll get from white people in our church is, how do y'all hold on so much through adversity? Not just racial adversity, but just adversity, period. Like the theology in Black music, both Christian and secular, has had within itself this need for endurance and strength. And that's why I love soul music. It just talks about the experience of the Black life, which is very different than others. And so I agree with you in that we need to have stronger expression individually, not just Black, but other cultures too, or Indian culture, Asian culture, you know, another Hispanic culture, another. But the theology needs to be steeped out of God's plan for your life and your community, so that you can then serve that community. A part of why I think we've gotten in trouble with this is because of the worldwide influence. Like, we've lost the power of place, right? My guy Jonathan Brooks in Lawndale, he wrote a powerful book talking about the theology of place. The theology of place and understanding proximity and where God has placed you. Your life is now steeped in that. Your life is now steeped in the reality and the theology of place, where God has placed me. So I think it's super difficult, to your point. Yeah. It's super difficult when we grab the theological perspective, the cultural framework, the lyricism, from a context that has nothing to do with our context. Right. And we say, yo, I'm gonna adopt that for where we are, and wonder why we're seeing not as much lasting change, in my opinion, at the local level. And so we're actually challenging, if you all can hear that, if you can tell, we're challenging songwriters. We're challenging songwriters and worship pastors and musicians to, if you are called to songwriting into even the industry, that you're writing songs for place, for the theology of place, for where God has placed you. But because of the worldwide, everybody wants to be around the nations now.
Exactly.
Everybody feels like my song needs to go to the nations. And I don't think that's bad, but I think it's distorted. I think it's distorted people's purposes, because if it doesn't go to the nations, we feel like it's irrelevant. And because Hillsong's gone to the nations, they are relevant. And because Bethel's gone to the nations, they are relevant. One thing I will say about those ministries, outside of the economics, outside of the marketing, outside of the influence, is that many of those ministries, say what you want about them, they did what they do.
Right.
They did, and they do what they do. They sing what they sing, they play what they play, and they write how they write.
Right.
And they're not changing it.
Right.
And then all of us are saying, we want to take that and appropriate it to our context. And they're saying, we're just doing what we're doing.
Yeah.
That's why I hate. And we've talked about this too. I hate when we try to write songs to sound like them.
Oh, yeah. No.
Because it's like, what's wrong with you? That's offensive, in my opinion, to the innate nature of an individual, a creative that God has made and formed before the foundation of the world.
Yeah.
Okay, have the influence of them, but you're not here to write songs like that.
And I always say, we don't need another Bethel sounding song. We need the unique gifting that God has put inside of you. You know what I'm saying? And then it also has a matter, like you said, you cannot worry about popularity. God's purpose of you writing a song could literally be to touch the hearts of the 100 people sitting in your congregation, because that's what he wanted to say to them. That's what he wanted to get across. And so we have to check our motives too. Like, it has to be like, God, I'm writing this song, and if 5 people are blessed by it, but that's enough. That's enough. You know what I'm saying? Like, popularity has to just become a lower priority, when we're writing.
Because it don't really mean nothing.
No.
It might sell records.
Yeah.
And listen to me. It's some songs that's been written from other contexts that have really gotten me through, right? Like, especially gospel music is a worldwide industry. And there have been some songs that got me through. Please keep writing those songs. If you're called to write for the world, called to write on a large level, national level, please. But what we're doing is we're challenging these local songwriters who feel like you're insignificant if you're not writing for the nations. Yeah. Can I say something? Forget the nations. Serve your neighborhood. Serve your context. Write specifically for where God has placed you. And then if the Holy Spirit uses that and appropriates that to other cultures and contexts, praise be to God. But if he doesn't, write for your local context.
I think of Psalm 91. We did not sit down and say, let's write a hit.
It wasn't even going to be the single.
You know what I'm saying? That was not the plan. We literally said, how has God been speaking to you this week? What have you been seeing in your word? And lo and behold, God has used it in the nation. I get messages all the time from Africa and different places. Like, glory to God that that's how it's been used. But that wasn't the motive initially.
No, never.
It just was like, here is my experience and what God is speaking to me this week. Let's put it in a song. So if you start out with, okay, what's going to be a hit? Motives are wrong.
It's already wrong. It's already wrong. I want to speak really quick to the songwriters, musicians, worship pastors that may be listening or watching this podcast. Something I was challenged with years ago. I even think Ferdig's the one that said it. Speaking of megachurch, but I remember either reading or hearing that one of the most disparaging places in a creator's home is creativity left on a hard drive.
Wow.
That you've got songs sitting on a hard drive, music sitting on a hard drive, that you, in your pride, will not appropriate to your local context or to wherever God has you do it. and you're not releasing what God has placed in you, it's a very prideful posture.
Ouch. Ouch.
Come on, somebody.
Look, I feel a little guilty up here.
I'm telling you, man, like we've been so industry driven and so industry discipled that if this song won't take off, I'm not going to release it.
Yeah.
The devil is a lie. First of all, life is way too short to be sitting on creativity on a hard drive.
Right.
And God forbid you leave this world and we've never experienced, or your local context has never experienced what God placed in you because you left it on a hard drive, or too prideful to say this is not ready, or it's not good, or it's not perfect.
Again, that starts with redefining our definition of success. Success is not number. Success is this song doing what God intended for it to do.
That's it.
That's what success is. Again, if that's just a few people like hearing it, you never know if somebody heard this and you changed their mind about something, or you provided some encouragement that they really needed that day. That has to be our, like, kingdom definitions are different from worldly, secular
Jacquelyn
definitions.
Owens. Say that again. Say that one again.
Kingdom definitions have to be different from secular. Like, it's a different worldview. Our paradigm is different. And so what success looks like for the world, which is top in the charts, high sales, that's not kingdom success.
Come on. Now, right. Kingdom is often unseen. Because kingdom success has everything to do with seed planting.
Yeah.
Seed, time, and harvest. Seed, watering, and harvest. And oftentimes, we don't see our songs as seeds.
Right.
Because if we don't see the harvest right away. A fun fact about Psalm 91, right? And we're proud of Psalm 91. Like, that's still my jam right now. You know what I mean? And it don't have 7 million views. I mean, some of these videos now, I mean, they day one, they got 24 million views, you know. But here's the thing. We wrote Psalm 91 in 16. We just went out and recorded it. Great song. Churches were singing it. We were blessed by it. It wasn't until the pandemic that nobody knew the global pandemic was coming, right? I ain't have a prophecy. I ain't have nothing about that. But here's the thing. We found out that people were Googling and searching Psalm 91 because they were needing to be comforted around the fact that God is going to keep us from pestilence. Yes. God is going to keep us, going to set our feet upon a rock. We're going to be secure under the safety of the Most High. And so people start Googling, and then our video starts popping up. Jackie hit me one day. She's like, a whole bunch of people watching this video.
Yeah, I'm like, did you run a marketing campaign? What's happening?
No. And then the other thing was, like, then other channels started, like, reappropriating the song and making lyric videos out of the song, et cetera, et cetera. The point in it is this. We didn't know that writing a song in 2016 was going to be the hope for somebody in 2020.
Exactly. Yeah.
In the middle of a shutdown, when people were looking for hope at some of their lowest points, people were losing jobs, people were sick, people were losing loved ones, people were dying during the pandemic, and people were consistently Googling Psalm 91, Psalm 91, Psalm 91. Our video started trending to the top of that YouTube search, and people started being blessed by a song that we wrote 4 years earlier.
Yeah,
the kingdom is about seed, and the kingdom is about the unseen. The kingdom is about sowing the seed and trusting the Holy Spirit to do with it what he wants to do with it.
That's it. We
in here preaching. What's all right. We're here preaching. Yo, this is so good. All right, so I want to keep leaning into this. I know we can't be here all day, and we already determined this probably needs to be multiple episodes.
Too much to get into.
But I really want to lean into this because this idea of white worship, in a sense, this was the narrative in 90s, white worship being the more excellent way because it was more sincere, it was more simple, it didn't have all them chords in it, it didn't have all them distractions and intros and outros, which I hate because I'm a musician. I love my intros and outros. I love my chords. I'm a gospel musician. That ain't gonna change. As a matter of fact, you start losing your chops when you start playing CCM every week. Which, and then I started playing an acoustic guitar. I really went all the way in. So I could talk about this, y'all. I went from a B3 organ to an acoustic guitar. I'm a product. I'm a product of the narrative.
Oh, that's funny.
Okay, well, God's help me. So, so we say, man, it's more simple. You can play it with a guitar. You can sing it by a campfire, yada, yada, yada. I love contemporary Christian music. I love gospel music. Gospel music is my preferred music. And these are the ones that I know. I know there are others, right? And that we need to honor other cultures, other nationalities, other races that have beautiful music that honors God. So I want to make that plain. But I want to challenge those who have bought into the narrative of that this music is a more excellent way. I want to call us into a discipling out of, or in some spaces we can call it like a decolonizing, because while there's innocence in the way in which we receive and listen to music, while some people just love God and they write music and where it goes, right. There is often like an agenda in some spaces where this is most comfortable to us. And so we want to be multi-ethnic, but this is the multi-ethnic we're going to do. Like when it comes to the music,
Right.
you ain't.
Right.
We multi-ethnic, but you about to sing this hill song.
Exactly.
We ain't gonna go no further than that. You understand what I'm saying? But
no, the multi-ethnic is the ethnic person on stage singing it.
Listen.
But the songs all written by people who look the same. You know what I'm saying? Like
that's what I'm saying.
Those songs that we're talking about that were coming up for those mega churches, the overwhelming majority of them look the same, Look the same, sound the same. And so I want to speak to that, to the multi-ethnic church that is dealing with the music side, which we're going to talk about how it affects a multi-ethnic church in a moment. But I want to kind of talk to two things right now. One is, if you're a multi-ethnic church and you see, let's say, white music or these 4 or 5 churches as the more excellent way, then you're in my opinion, in major error in regards to having a multi-ethnic experience and community, right? Like we need to be, there's a colonization that happens in a lot of spaces that call themselves multi-ethnic. And it happens through music. It happens through preaching style, right? It happens through aesthetics. We talked about this in past podcasts. It's Willie Jennings calls it glorified white bodies. That is the more excellent way. And when we talk about multi-ethnic churches, and when we begin to slice up what is going to be acceptable in this multi-ethnic church and what won't be, oftentimes, the music always gets the bad end of the stick. Yeah. It's always leaning towards the more comfortable way. Why? And this is what I've learned. This is my story. As a black worship leader that is led in majority white spaces or multi-ethnic spaces, I've learned that leading worship, being me, was too intrusive upon those who are white in the congregation. And that my job as a black worship leader was to represent diversity, right? Was to represent inclusion. And my job was to make sure I don't offend white people. Now that sounds bad, but that's just a fact. Yeah. And any black or colored worship leader, a person of color, that has been in a space like that, probably shouting right now on the other side of this camera saying, "To God be, I'm glad somebody said it." And it's often phrased, "Oh, I don't think our church is ready for that song." That's the way they're saying, like, a little too black, a little too urban.
It's a little too much. That's a little too much.
Yeah.
And so, but it's actually a heavy load as a person of color in a worship space to actually always assimilate to a way that makes the majority white audience comfortable. Yeah. And that's facts, right? That's like 100% facts. And so here's what I'm calling for. I'm calling for, one, the decolonization of churches who see the white experience musically as the right way. That's wrong. Like that is not the more excellent way. Yeah. The black music experience is not the more excellent way. The Hispanic music experience is not the more excellent way. But in the majority of multi-ethnic churches, sorry, I take that back, not in the majority of, in a lot of multi-ethnic churches that I've encountered that are majority white, that person of color leading worship has to assimilate and has to feel comfortable white people. So we scale back our voice. We scale back our vibrato. We take off that third harmony. Come on, somebody. Y'all ain't saying nothing, right?
That's right.
We
That's
take it
right.
off. We chill, and we start sounding like my man who was the head of United. I remember one time I was singing. I was like, yo, I sound like this guy. That ain't me. That ain't me, y'all.
I mean, and as a worship leader who has been in that position, I literally felt like stifled, like frustrated, when I would be singing these songs, and I'm like, what is this? And so at one of the churches I ended up leaving, kind of in my exit interview, I said, God has given me a certain expression of worship, and I feel like I can't express it there, and I know it's not about me and my preferences, but you are like stamping out like who God created me to be. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
God, I have a certain vibrato. I have a certain way, like you expressed about that harmony. I've literally been told, oh, we don't need that third harmony in there. And it like boils me inside not to add the third harmony. You know what I'm saying? So it's like I'm not able to express myself fully if I'm not singing in the expression that God has given me.
Yeah, and like we comply, right? Like
Yeah.
if we're making music or a part of a team, if you want something softer or loud or whatever, like we follow instructions. But I think the overall point is if you want me a part of this team and you're saying you're multi-ethnic, there comes with that some responsibility to understand that I'm bringing all of Jackie to this team. And the reason why I want you on this team is because you have nuances and abilities and skills and gifts that we don't have.
Because I'm forced to believe if I'm not able to express in the way God has given me, we talked about this earlier, why I haven't been hired. Like I can only believe that is how I look, is the reason that you hire me. If how I look and what I do is not being allowed to be expressed, you hire me because of how I look, and that's problematic.
That's strong, yo.
Yeah.
That's strong.
Yeah.
So if you won't let me express myself within the confines of appropriate culture,
Yep.
if I can't express myself and be me, the only thing I can result to is that you wanted my color.
Yeah.
Jackie Owens, you preached on that one. You preached on that one. That was good. Oh, that one got me stuck. All right. So we need to be discipled out of white music and songwriters are the more excellent way. And we need to be discipled into an inclusion of culture, an inclusion of messiness that says that what you bring to the table is going to change the construct of our organization, of our music, of our church. Here's something super, super interesting. I've been reading this guy named Gerardo Marti. You all may know him. He's a sociologist at Davidson University. And so he wrote a whole book or dissertation on multi-ethnic worship in multi-ethnic churches. And I want us to deal with this for a second because he found some pretty dope observations that I want to deal with. So here was one of his main conclusions out of this book. So y'all check him out. Gerardo Marti. Check him out. Here's what he concluded in his book. I forgot the name of his book. I'll put it down there somewhere. He said, the racial diversity of the worship leadership is a greater determining factor of the racial diversity of a congregation than the music style. So the diversity of the worship leadership is a greater determining factor of racial diversity in the church other than above music. And he says it doesn't matter the quality or the style. A racially diverse worship team serves as an icon of hospitality, diversity, identifying the desire and effort on the part of the congregation to attract a racially diverse congregation. All right? Further, he says, I'll read this last line. Further, the racial diversity established in the congregation is primarily relational. Relationships forged across racial lines by working together in the music ministry become a catalyst for a network of cross-racial relationships. I thought that was a dope conclusion. I'm gonna tell you why.
That's good.
The reason why I really like what he wrote in this book is because for the last 20 years of me being in some sort of music ministry or church, one of the key objectives to a church wanting to be multi-ethnic was changing the music. And it's hilarious because it really never works.
Right.
It never worked. Or at least for me, in my context, it never worked. So I was hired by a church that was all white, and they said, man, we want to be multi-ethnic, and you understand both sides of the coin, so you can sing, United Pursuit, but you also can sing Fred Hammond. So if we bring that diversity out of you, then we're gonna diversify this church. And what happened was it turned the church black because they did let me express myself the way I did. And when I sang a song by Chris Tomlin, it didn't sound like Chris Tomlin. As a matter of fact, the congregation didn't know who it was. They thought I wrote it. Right?
Right.
And so the church turned black because the worship team was black. And now when I leave, all the black people leave because they came for that kind of style, and it didn't diversify the congregation. What Marty is saying is it's the relationships and the leadership represented. Now, not tokenism, not putting up a Hispanic, a black, a white, not that. It's the relational component.
Right.
It's the proximity of said worship leaders that then makes the congregation more diverse. Not the music style,
Right.
or even the quality.
And that makes total sense because what it comes down to is who's at the table making decisions. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
When a worship team and when pastors are diverse, there's diversity at the table for different ideas and different suggestions for song. I was at a church, stage full, all white church, stage full of black people, but we had no say in anything. We were singers. We sang what they told us to. But when you flip that around and make leaders and bring people to the table who have diverse perspectives, that's how you diversify. You know what I'm saying? Diversity is not a white church having a stage full of black people. It's leadership and who is speaking into what's happening in the church and helping make decisions. That's how you bring diversity.
Yeah, that's good. And in other words, also what you're saying, what I think you're saying is who has power at the table to bring real change, right? Not who's represented necessarily,
right.
but who's at the table who has some sort of power attributed to their voice in all races to really formulate a true multi-ethnic racial a multiracial experience. Because some people may say, we ain't doing that. Like for me, in some spaces, it's like we're not singing that song by Kirk Franklin because Lil Pete he can barely play G, C, and D. So I'm not going to do that. We're not doing that. We don't have the muscle to experience that kind of music right now. However, there's some other ways that we can bring diversity to the table. But this guy Marty really speaks to what I subscribe to, which is proximity. Unity through proximity and place. And when he says relational unity, and he has a term for it, I think he actually calls it, let me tell you what he calls it. He actually calls it racialized ritual inclusion. So the inclusive nature of all all races in collaboration, in relationship with each other. Now, I'll be honest, in the same spaces as a black worship leader, if I've had situations where I've had a white pastor and we have no relationship. And to me, as a worship pastor, a black worship pastor with a white pastor, how in the world are we going to foster diversity if there's no relationship on that level?
Right.
let alone how are we going to foster any kind of cohesive, multi-ethnic, communal worship experience if the worship team is not relational and diverse at the same time.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? And so I agree with what he's saying. Now, what I don't agree with what he's saying is what he found, and he studied over God knows how many churches, but he said that the music doesn't diversify the church. The quality or the style is the relationship. Give me some quality. I don't want no church with bad quality of music. I'm sorry, church. I know y'all doing the best you can. I know all you got is Lil Petey to play the piano. But listen to me. I don't want to be in no church that's got bad quality music. I do respect, though, that when churches are trying to have diverse expressions of worship, that they do the best they can with what they have. And I think most churches can accomplish that to some degree. Yeah. Any other thoughts on that, Jay?
No, I mean, I think those are powerful quotes just about the collaboration. That's how conversations happen. You know, if there aren't conversations happening, you don't know that there's an issue or that, you know, maybe we should do more diverse music. So, yeah, that's important.
I got to say this just because this is my story. And I just want to make sure we understand this on this podcast. Stop hiring black worship leaders because you want soul. And stop hiring people of color to lead worship at your church if you don't intend to have a framework for multi-ethnic relational capacity within the entirety of the church.
That's it.
Please.
That's it.
And because it's hurting the witness of the multi-ethnic church. And I'll be honest with you, because I'm going to close on this, because I feel like it used to be weekly. Now it's more so monthly. I'm counseling black worship leaders who lead in majority white churches who are a placeholder for this proposed diversity. Yet there's no relationship component to it, and there's no say-so in regards to what they bring to the table. It's like you said, do what I say, sing as I say, and that's a real thing.
Which is called a puppet.
It's called a puppet.
At that point, it's a puppet.
It's called some other stuff, but I don't want to mess up, our trend, any kind of trending we may have on the podcast. But these guys and girls are in pain and they're hurting. Oh, yeah. To be honest with you, this was part of the reason why we started the podcast, to give voice to minority voices who feel called to multi-ethnic spaces, but they are literally hurting and burning on the inside simply because they're put up on a platform to perform and they have no say-so in what they bring to the table. That's not diversity or multi-ethnic. That's mono-ethnic with black folk leading the charge. Yeah. Oh, how long we been talking?
A minute. We've been keep talking. Going too.
Yeah. We going, and I'm gonna end there. We got to come back and do something else with this because I have some more to say on this topic. But I want to encourage y'all to one. Thank you, Jackie.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Come on, Jackie's in the house.
My pleasure. I'm honored.
Woo, my girl. This is what we do, though.
Yeah.
It was something happened, like something hit the media. I called Jackie immediately. Girl, can you believe so-and-so? Or I do this too. Or I see this like church that I know ain't caring about diversity. They hire like this black worship leader. And I'm like, I'm calling them today.
Yeah,
I'm gonna talk to them. I'm talking to him and I'm talking to them.
Yeah.
And so we talk like this. So I'm glad we were able to do it for everyone else to witness and experience on the podcast. So thank you, Jackie. A couple things, Jackie, is we've done records with Renew Collective, but you got your own music.
Yeah.
My favorite song, called Kingdom, is out right now. You got a whole bunch of streams on that one on YouTube and Spotify and everything. Kingdom. Yeah. And so you can find that anywhere. Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube. Watch the video. The video's off the charts. Jackie's one of the dopest singer-songwriters dopest voices that I know. And I'm just blessed to know you, blessed to know what God's doing in your music. And you need to keep writing the music, get them songs off the hard drive.
Look, yes, this inspired me today. I know we having a conversation, but seriously, as you said, we're not coming here as like with all the answers. We're guilty of many of the things we just discussed. You know what I'm saying? But the conversation is important. Like, how else do you solve things if you don't talk about it? You know what I'm saying? So, honored to be here. Really excited about what God is doing through you in this podcast. You know, I believe it's just going to reach and have a great impact because nobody's talking about this stuff.
Come on, sister.
Yeah.
Where can we find you online, on Instagram and all that kind of stuff? You find me, you find Jackie. But Jacquelyn Owens on Instagram?
Yeah, Jacquelyn Owens _ on Instagram, Jacquelyn Owens 11 on Facebook, and music is on Spotify, YouTube, everywhere you listen to music is out.
Let's go. Look, I thank y'all for rocking with the Gospel and Race podcast. We've wrapped up this conversation on worship, and I just want to make sure you subscribe, you follow, rock with us on Instagram, follow us on, subscribe to us on YouTube. Let's continue pushing this forward and share this with any worship leader or pastor, anyone you know is trying to lean into the multi-ethnic space. I believe we have some stuff that can help them. All right, y'all. Peace.